Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News, and here are some of the top stories we've been following. Alberta takes in evacuees as wildfire forces thousands to evacuate the Northwest Territories. Plus, British Columbia sets a new record for electricity demand as the province's heat wave breaks records set nearly a century ago. And footage emerges showing possible cause of the Maui fire that killed at least 106 people.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks for joining us. Thousands of Northwest Territories residents have been forced out of their homes by some of the 236 wildfires torching the boreal forest. An area almost 4 times the size of Prince Edward Island has gone up in flames. Residents in some parts of Yellowknife are on evacuation notices. People evacuated from Fort Smith, Enterprise, Jean Marie River, and Hay River are being flown to temporary shelters set up as far south as Calgary. There are reports that much of the hamlet of Enterprise is gone. Fires have shut down many highways, prompting the territory to launch its largest airlift in history. And the BC Wildfire Service is bracing for increased wildfire risk conditions later this week, including high heat, gusty winds, and dry lightning. The worst wildfire season in the province's history has seen more than 16,000 square kilometers go up in flames. 145 of the 370 wildfires burning in the province are classified as out of control. Crews are working to get trapped campers out of the Cathedral Provincial Park in southern BC, and an evacuation order is in effect for properties in the area of southwest of Kiramias affected by 2 wildfires that have been burning for several weeks. Meanwhile, BC cracked a record for electricity consumption this week. BC's provincial power utility says that it set a new record for the highest peak hourly demand for August. BC Hydro said in a statement that consumption reached over 8,400 megawatts on Monday night. Well, that's equal to turning on 1 million air conditioning units. This comes as most of southern BC has been broiling in a heat wave, and temperatures knocked out records in some areas of the province that were set almost a century ago. Environment Canada says Lytton, BC was the hot spot in the country yesterday, hitting 42.2 degrees Celsius. However, a heat warning remains in effect for much of southern Alberta. On Tuesday, we broke records in several communities, including Waterton, Cardston, Pincher Creek, High River, and Claresholm. Angela Stewart is in now to tell us how long this heat will continue. Angela, we're not quite out of the woods just yet, are we?
Yeah, so we're not going to be feeling any reprieve just yet, as tomorrow is expected to be the hottest day for this week. We are under a heat warning. 37 degrees is expected for tomorrow. Could also be feeling some light winds here and there, gusting to about 40 at times. And then as the rest of the week goes on, heading into the weekend and early next week, cooler temperatures are on the way. Also, some rain is in the forecast, so that'll help to cool things off. Like I mentioned, 37 for tomorrow. However, today we reached a high of 31. Expected to sit at a low of 15 tonight, 37, like I said, and a low of 17 for tomorrow night. As for how the rest of the week is shaping up, I'll have all those details coming up later on in the show.
Okay, thanks so much, Angela. A social media video posted by a Lahaina resident the day the wildfires in Maui started is putting a scrutiny on downed power lines as the cause of the deadly fires. Video footage has emerged as key evidence, and Hawaiian Electric Company is facing a class action lawsuit for not shutting off the power.
Oh, this is live right across the street from my house. Freaking power line just went down.
I hear a pop coming from across the street. As soon as I hear the pop, all I heard is like electrical, like zzz, going on the ground there. Look, there's the power line right there.
See them right there, that's the power line that started from up the road there. And all of that is still burning.
From there, to me, it simulated a fuse, like somebody lit a fuse for a firework. And it just followed a straight line all the way up to the pole where the thing was. And it landed in a bigger pile of dry grass, and that just ignited. You get all this wind blowing, and now you get a fire. It just, that was fuel, and just in a matter of minutes, that whole place was just engulfed. They came up with a water truck, started dousing it, had another couple local construction companies brought up their water tankers. just also helped and assist and just knocking down the fire.
Hey, heads up, the line is live on the ground right there. I send my family away ready. Thank you.
We thought it was all contained. And then from there, just went ahead about our day, thinking that it was all done. Unbeknownst that later on that afternoon, the winds just continued to just smoke the whole day. And I guess that's what just fueled the restarting. Yeah, I'm happy that it was out there for them to see. And a lot of them got warning when they saw the Facebook Live. Maybe it'll bring closure to some of the families, answer some of the questions, help determine what was the start.
And crews in Hawaii are using cadaver dogs to search for more of those victims. A statement said crews with dogs scoured about 32% of the area by Tuesday. FEMA has sent 20 dogs and hundreds of crew members. At least 106 people were confirmed dead by late Tuesday, with many more still missing. Hawaiian Governor Josh Green has opened a main east-west road on Maui for a few hours a day, but the U.S. National Guard is making sure no one goes into the impact zone in Lahaina, where teams are still searching for victims of last week's wildfires. Green says people are holding up and grateful for the outpouring of support. Most public schools are starting to reopen, but several are still being assessed to make sure that the air and water quality are safe. Governor Green gave an update as to when President Joe Biden might arrive, and he gave a stern warning to anyone with ill intent wishing to loot, cause harm, or take advantage of any wildfire victims.
If someone behaves in a predatory fashion towards one of the people that are suffering right now, who have lost their loved ones, or lost their home, lost their rental, and they try to buy land out from under them, you can be sure I will not be allowing anyone to build or rezone or do anything of that sort if they've taken advantage of anyone here. So President Biden and I will work out a time for him to come when the tough work is done, when the heartbreaking work is done on the ground, finding those we've lost. He was so sensitive about that. He did not want to interfere with the incredibly difficult emotional and physical work that goes on in a disaster zone.
And considering downed power lines may have been the root cause of the Maui fires, crews with the electric utility in Lethbridge acted quickly Tuesday night and may have avoided a catastrophic situation. The crews responded swiftly to a number of downed power poles on the west side of Lethbridge. The city did not say how many poles were impacted, but that they were in good shape and unfortunately were knocked over by strong winds. A crew of 11 worked into the summer night to repair the damage, and power was restored within 9 hours. Well, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says Statistics Canada has confirmed that prices at the pump are up because of Trudeau's carbon tax. The Tory leader is on a, quote, axe the tax tour, where he made a stop in Prince Edward Island Tuesday, promising that Conservatives will axe the tax to bring home lower prices.
And boy, is that tour ever timely. Look at Trudeau's tax right there, $185.8. Gas prices have skyrocketed across Atlantic Canada since Trudeau's tax took effect at the beginning of last month. And now the devastating consequences are hitting grocery stores. Just this week, we saw the inflation numbers out, and food inflation was worse in Prince Edward Island than anywhere else. The Atlantic provinces were among the worst anywhere in Canada. That corresponds with the coming into force of the carbon tax. Higher taxes on the farmers who make the food and the truckers who ship the food means higher taxes on all who buy the food.
Federal Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault is defending Canada's efforts to meet its climate targets, despite news that Equinor plans to more drilling off of Newfoundland. He says greenhouse gas emissions from the industry have to come down regardless of any production increases for Canada to meet its climate targets. Guilbeault told reporters in St. John's he's working on regulations that will require oil and gas producers to cut their carbon emissions to keep Canada in line with its goals. But according to Michelle Sterling with Friends of Science, 80% of our energy is fossil fuels. She says, she argues the idea of linking provincial electrical grids together to share wind and solar power is a question of reality versus delusion.
You know, the grids are essentially serving each province. They're not connected. So the whole idea that the Liberal Party has had since 2005, I think, is to connect them all, kind of like Lego. They think it would be simple, because then if there's lots of wind in Alberta and there's nothing in Ontario, you can ship the power there. That's just not how electricity grids work. It's very expensive and dangerous. It would put us at risk of national blackouts.
Catch the full interview with Michelle Sterling and BCN's Michael Clausen coming up later in our show. And when it comes to the federal government's 2035 deadline to reach climate targets, Alberta legislative reporter Tyler Dawson says there's not just a disagreement between the provinces, but also a disagreement of the parties.
Basically, what the UCP are saying is, look, this just isn't possible. So much of this is natural gas. This would require colossal investments in carbon capture and sequestration. This would require massive investments in wind and solar, perhaps some small nuclear reactor stuff. So the costs here are going to be fairly substantial, and the UCP says, look, it's just not possible. Now, the NDP say that it is possible, and it potentially is. It just would require a lot of money. But the interesting thing on the NDP front is the Alberta NDP says it's possible. The Saskatchewan NDP says it isn't, and of course, the federal NDP is a bit wishy-washy on it.
That full interview with Tyler Dawson, legislative correspondent with the National Post, is coming up after business news. Alberta's opposition NDP critic for energy and climate says the Premier of Alberta deliberately sabotaged a booming sector of the province's economy by issuing a moratorium on wind and solar projects. During a press conference, NDP's Kathleen Ganley went on to say Danielle Smith did not consult with or give notice to those in the energy sector prior to halting production, and that Smith lied about writing to the Alberta Utilities Commission requesting the 6-month halt.
That isn't true. The letter she referenced says no such thing. The letter says, quote, effective resolution necessarily requires a dedicated period of engagement with all stakeholders identified above, followed by government direction, either in the form of provincial policy or new legislation, end quote. That's a request for stakeholder engagement. Governments routinely do engagement and regulatory reviews. They do so without shutting down an entire industry. The letter does not request a halt or a pause or a moratorium. This is immediately obvious to anyone who has read it. Next, Smith claimed the Alberta Electric System Operator, the AESO, requested the pause. This one is also a lie. The AESO letter clearly says, thank you for telling us about the moratorium. We will follow the direction. No request, no praise for the idea. All of that is a pure fabrication by Smith.
Now, Bridge City News reached out to Alberta's Minister of Affordability and Utilities, Nathan Newdorf, for a response to Ganley's attack, but he could not be reached by airtime. Lethbridge police are seeking information in a home invasion and shooting that occurred July 30th around 11:30 p.m. in the 200 block of Stafford Bay North. Police say 3 unknown men forced the front door open of a residence and assaulted the home occupants. The unknown subject carried weapons, and one of them discharged a firearm inside the house. Following the assault, the 3 men left the area in a newer model gray-colored SUV. Lethbridge Fire and EMS attended to the victims, who were treated on scene for minor injuries. The suspects were described as men in their 20s or 30s, wearing darker clothing and face coverings. Police believe the incident was targeted and are asking anyone with information to contact the number on your screen or Crime Stoppers. A well-known pastor and his wife, who lost their home in a devastating fire a couple of years ago, are embarking on a new adventure in Winnipeg. The couple has left their mark on the community after joining the Lethbridge Salvation Army 5 years ago. They have both been in ministry for over 20 years now. Video journalist Micah Quinn caught up with Don in Winnipeg to chat about his time in Lethbridge and what's next for him and his wife, Donna.
I wish I could say that it was a decision. It was more of a matter of being appointed and coming into agreement. with the appointment.
The couple recently accepted jobs with the Winnipeg Salvation Army, and a special party was held this past weekend to send them off. Bladen says he will be in charge of overlooking 15 communities in his new role as area commander in Winnipeg. He told us he'll miss the people in Lethbridge and the incredible memories that were made.
The opening of our thrift store, the marriage of a young couple in our church, and different gatherings that we had at Henderson Lake or down by the river or going down to Waterton. There's any number of things I could talk about, and we could take a long time.
Unfortunately, not everything was smooth sailing for the couple. Back in 2020, their home was destroyed by fire, leaving nothing but a massive pile of rubble. Bladen says he credits his faith in God as a huge help following the tragedy.
It was a horrible thing. We lost everything, really. When we visited the house a couple of days after the fact and, all the rubble was cleared away, I was just looking at a hole in the ground. The feelings, the emotions, all of what went with that, as I think back, in many ways are very overwhelming. I'm a man of God. I'm a man of faith. And when you place tragedy or life's circumstance, whatever it is, into that context or into that framework, you realize that all of these things have something to teach us, right? To me, in many ways, it's a terrible memory, but it's a good memory too.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
A couple of Lethbridge College students have been named as finalists for the Capstone Project of the Year Award. The award is given out on a yearly basis through ASET, the Association of Science and Engineering Technology Professionals of Alberta. Hannah Thompson was one of the finalists, along with her partner Tice Daniels, who were both recognized for their project to determine whether the addition of glass fibers mixed with hot asphalt would improve its performance.
We believed that the glass fibers would create elastic-like properties. You would kind of think of it as a spider web, how it sticks to things, and that's kind of how asphalt cement would be to glass fibers. Early July, that's when we got the email saying, congratulations, you're a finalist, and that's when it all really hit me and my partner Tice were, oh my gosh, we're a finalist, and we were really shocked, but really, really happy about it.
Thompson and her partner are one of 9 finalists for the project. The winning project will be announced at the end of October. The United Way of Lethbridge and southwestern Alberta will be hosting their first annual Pull the Bus campaign next month. Residents will team up in groups of 8 and work together to pull a city transit bus to raise money for various organizations. The executive director for United Way, Jackie Zalesak, says a lot of organizations have been struggling financially throughout the year, so this campaign is a great way to show their support.
We've seen a lot of events cancel or being postponed. And so this is really United Way stepping up to pull together as a community and help support different agencies throughout different communities. Being able to raise funds, as United Way does support different agencies in the human services fields to raise money to support the programs that are vital and needed most throughout our communities. And so this is going to be a really important event to help raise those dollars.
The Pull the Bus event takes place on September 11th at Festival Square. The heat continues for much of southern Alberta, and after the break, we'll tell you how the forecast is shaping up in your region. We'll be right back. Welcome back. A heat warning is still in effect for southern Alberta. Angela Stewart is here now with the full weather details. Angela, we've been breaking records all across southern Alberta this week, but will we break one here in Lethbridge?
Yeah, Jeanette, so we're actually expected to break a record for tomorrow. 37 degrees is our expected high for Lethbridge. That will be the record of 36 degrees set back in 2001. So it's going to be very, very hot tomorrow. So keep that in mind. If you are heading out, make sure to drink lots of water, wear loose-fitting clothing, take lots of breaks in the shade to try and beat that heat. And then as the rest of the week goes on, heading into the weekend and into next week, low to mid-20s is kind of what we're seeing, and some rain expected here and there. So that'll help to cool things off as we are coming out of that heat. 20 degrees expected for Friday, kicking off our weekend with rain. 21, 25, lots of sunshine for Saturday, Sunday, so a great day to get out. And then 24, 25 with rain and partly cloudy conditions for Monday and Tuesday for next week. Our average high for this time of year is 26 degrees. Our average low is 10. 36 degrees was the highest temperature recorded back in 1962 on this day. And then 4 degrees was the average low back in 2000. Our sun rose at 6:23 this morning, expected to set at 8:47. That'll put us at about just over 14 hours of daylight today. Our temperatures across the country now for Thursday. There are heat warnings in both Vancouver and in Victoria, so keep that in mind if you are in those areas. Some winds are expected near the water, near the Wandafuka Strait in Victoria. 26 for tomorrow. Going to be feeling much hotter as you move inland, though, with that humidex. Going to be feeling more like 29 degrees in Vancouver. 25 the expected high. There's no heat warning in Edmonton, but 31 degrees tomorrow, so very warm. There is a heat warning in Calgary, just like us, so 35 expected there. Lots of sunshine for the rest of Alberta. No heat warnings in Saskatchewan for Saskatoon, but 30 degrees expected with some cloud coverage. There is also some widespread smoke in some parts of Saskatchewan, specifically Saskatoon. However, 29 degrees in Regina. Now, when we're talking about Winnipeg, there is a special air quality statement. The reason being is because we have those wildfires burning in the northern prairies and the Northwest Territories, so it's making its way down to Winnipeg, causing low visibility and, making low visibility not great if you are heading out. Also keep in mind if you have underlying health conditions. So that is expected to last for a little while, kind of unknown at this point, but 23 nonetheless expected for there tomorrow. The central part of the country now, lots of moisture kind of throughout as we're seeing. Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal, those high 20s, 27, 28, 29. Those cooler conditions are kind of expected for the remainder of the week if you are in the central part of the country. So that'll help to cool things off. And then in Atlantic Canada, there are no heat warnings, but it's going to still be very, very warm. 27, 25, 24, and 21 for Fredericton, Halifax, Charlottetown, and St. John's. There is some cloud coverage expected for tomorrow in St. John's, but nonetheless, beautiful conditions all around. And that is a look at your full weather forecast.
Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation reports the annual pace of housing starts fell 10% between June and July. The annual pace of urban starts fell 11%, and multi-unit urban starts fell 12%. CMHC noted the steep drops were in Toronto and Vancouver, while housing starts rose 12% in Montreal, 33% in Calgary, and 6% in Edmonton. Well, here's a funny one. An hours-long technical glitch at the Bank of Ireland led to some customers being able to withdraw money they didn't have. According to the bank, the outage, which started yesterday and stretched into today, allowed some customers to transfer and withdraw funds above their normal limits. As word spread on social media, images and video footage started to appear, showing people lining up at ATMs in the hopes of getting free money. The Bank of Ireland warns that each withdrawal will still appear as a debit on customers' accounts. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down just under a point today to finish at 19,899. The Dow was down 180 points to 34,765. The S&P 500 was down 33 on the day to finish at 4404, and the Nasdaq was down 156 points to 13,474. West Texas Intermediate oil was down $1.61 to $79.38 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 7 cents to $2.59 US. Gold was down $10.19 to $18.91.81 US an ounce, and silver was even at $22.42 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $10.31 per bushel, barley's at $8.16, canola's at $17.90, and corn's at $9.73 per bushel. Live cattle were down 33 cents to $178.78. Feeder cattle were down 50 cents to $245.38. Lean hogs were down 3 cents to $78.18, and the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to $73.91 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, thousands of people in several communities in the Northwest Territories have evacuated as more than 200 wildfires continue to burn. The government says one fire has come within 16 kilometers of the capital, Yellowknife. Fire officials say the blazes have been overwhelming and could reach the city's outskirts this weekend if the region doesn't get any rain. Up next, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's fight with the energy sector continues to aggravate her opponents and has some people questioning her motives. Also, what will the legislature look like when it resumes this fall? Legislative correspondent Tyler Dawson breaks it all down after the break. And if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of today's stories, be sure to visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca.